01 Privateers rarely buried treasure. A few privateers covered fortune, most outstandingly Captain William Kidd, who was at the time going to New York to hand himself over and ideally demonstrate his innocence, however most never did. There were explanations behind this. Above all else, a large portion of the plunder accumulated after an assault was immediately split among the group, who would prefer to spend it than cover it. Besides, a great part of the treasure comprised of transient products like texture, cocoa, food or different things that would immediately get destroyed whenever covered. The constancy of this legend is mostly because of the ubiquity of the great novel, Fortune Island, which incorporates a chase for covered privateer treasure. 02. Their careers didn't last long. Most privateers didn't keep going exceptionally long. It was an extreme profession, many were murdered or harmed in fight or in battles among themselves, and clinical officers were normally non-existent. Indeed, even the most renowned privateers, for example, Blackbeard or Bartholomew Roberts, just were dynamic in theft for a few years. Roberts, who had a long and effective vocation for a privateer, was just dynamic for around 3 years from 1719 to 1722. 03. They had rules and regulations. On the off chance that all you could possibly do was watch privateer films, you'd imagine that being a privateer was simple, no guidelines other than to assault rich Spanish vessels, drink rum and swing around in the apparatus. As a general rule, most privateer groups had a code which all individuals were required to recognize or sign. These guidelines included disciplines for lying, taking or battling ready. Privateers paid attention to these articles and disciplines could be serious. 04. They didn't walk the plank. Apologies, however this one is another fantasy. There are a few stories of privateers stepping out into certain doom well after the brilliant age finished, however little proof to propose this was a typical discipline before at that point. Not that privateers didn't have compelling disciplines, as you may have guessed. Privateers who submitted an infraction could be marooned on an island, whipped, or even bottom pulled, a horrible discipline wherein a privateer was attached to a rope and afterward tossed over the edge. He was then hauled down one side of the boat, under the vessel, over the bottom and afterward back up the opposite side. This doesn't sound really awful until you recall that boat bottoms were typically secured with barnacles, frequently bringing about intense wounds. 05. A good pirate ship had good officers. A privateer transport was in excess of a boatload of criminals, executioners, and scoundrels. A decent boat was an all-around run machine, with officials and an away from of work. The chief chose where to go and when, and which foe boats to assault. He likewise had outright order during fight. The officer directed the boat's activity and split the plunder. There were different positions, including bosun, woodworker, cooper, heavy armament specialist, and pilot. Accomplishment as a privateer transport relied upon these men completing their errands proficiently and administering the men under their order. 06. The pirates didn't limit themselves to the Caribbean. The Caribbean was an incredible spot for privateers, there was almost no law, there were a lot of uninhabited islands for forts, and numerous dealer vessels went through. Be that as it may, the privateers of the brilliant age didn't just work there. Many crossed the sea to organize strikes off the west shore of Africa, including the unbelievable Dark Bart Roberts. Others cruised similarly as the Indian Ocean to work the delivery paths of southern Asia. It was in the Indian Ocean that Henry Long Ben Avery made perhaps the greatest score ever, the rich fortune transport Ganjai Sawai. 07. There were women pirates. It was incredibly uncommon, however ladies did incidentally tie on a cutlass and gun and take to the oceans. The most well-known models were Anne Bonny and Mary Read, who cruised with Calico Jack Rackham in 1719. Bonny and Read dressed as men and supposedly battled similarly to, or better than, their male partners. When Rackham and his team were caught, Bonny and Read declared that they were both pregnant and in this manner abstained from being hanged alongside the others. 08. Robbery was better than the alternatives. Were privateers edgy men who couldn't discover legitimate work? Not generally. Numerous privateers picked the life, and at whatever point a privateer halted a dealer transport, it was normal for a bunch of vendor crew members to join the privateers. This was on the grounds that fair work adrift comprised of either shipper or military help, the two of which highlighted detestable conditions. Mariners were come up short on, routinely cheated of their wages, beaten at the scarcest incitement and frequently compelled to serve. It should astonish nobody that many would readily pick the more sympathetic and equitable life on board a privateer vessel. 09. They came from all social classes. Not the entirety of the Golden Age privateers were uneducated hooligans who took up theft for absence of a superior method to get by. Some of them originated from higher social classes too. William Kidd was a finished mariner and rich man when he set out in 1696 on a privateer chasing Crucial, turned privateer presently. Another model is Major Stede Bonnet, who was a well-off manor proprietor in Barbados before he furnished a boat and turned into a privateer in 1717. Some state he did it to escape from a bothering spouse. 10. Not all pirates were criminals. At times it relied upon your perspective. During wartime, countries would frequently give letters of marque and reprisal, which permitted boats to assault adversary ports and vessels. As a rule, these boats kept the loot or imparted some of it to the legislature that had given the letter. These men were classified privateers, and the most acclaimed models were Sir Francis Drake and Captain Henry Morgan. These Englishmen never assaulted English boats, ports or vendors and were viewed as extraordinary legends by the regular people of England. The Spanish, be that as it may, thought of them as privateers.